So, I'm going to kick off with this cartoon that was recently online. The ungoogleable man. Even the most powerful search engines cannot detect him, and yet he walks amongst us. And I think this is funny because it's kind of recognising a shift in terms of how we are socially, in terms of our engagement with the internet, in terms of how we use technology increasingly as part of our daily lives, and the people in this room will be quite aware of that, I think. And as Sue pointed out at the beginning of the talk, yes, it's very, very important in economic terms, in terms of life opportunities, in terms of life skills, in terms of networking, in terms of economics, and that's in terms of the broader things like getting job opportunities. It's also in terms of things like being able to buy things cheaper and making your money go further. But it's also very important socially for a lot of people. So, ungoogleable man is kind of emblematic of somebody who hasn't really engaged in that process, in that practice, and hasn't really started to use technology that actually now most of us take for granted to connect with each other, to talk to each other. Ungoogleable man is on his way out, according to Gordon Brown, and probably according to whoever gets in after the election. A couple of weeks ago, there was the Building Digital's Britain's Future Breakfast. I don't know if any of you saw it, where Gordon Brown basically announced that part of the £11 billion per year savings planned by the Labour government were going to come about by taking currently a lot of face-to-face delivered services, especially at local government level, and putting them online, starting to look at online-only service provision. So obviously there's huge implications in terms of the confidence and the skills that most people, especially the people who are wanting to tap into services and benefits and all of those kind of ranges of things have got, and how we equip them for that. And it's kind of part of the broader digital divide address of the country, to get that 20% of the UK who aren't online, who don't have any email addresses, don't have social networking addresses, are that ungoogleable man, actually online. And how this is going to come about, according to the Labour Party, is obviously primarily through online-only services, which are going to be a huge push, because if you can only access your benefits online, you're soon going to get online, hopefully, but also through a new government portal called MyGov, which is going to be a service that provides everybody in the country with their own personalised access to their local government and national government services. Lots of people have said, well, is this not just the ID card by the back door? And there are obviously privacy implications within requiring people to be able to access services by registering in a central database. There's obviously massive implications there. But we're not going to focus so much on those today, although we can come and talk about them again. What we're going to look more at is actually the kind of day-to-day activity that most of us are doing, not because we have to, but because we actually want to, because we find benefit from it. Okay, this is a statistic from a little while ago now. It's the end of October 07, so a while ago, and what it shows is it's Hitwise, which is it's an industry stat aggregator. So for any researchers in the audience, please don't say, oh, but it's an industry aggregator, your statistical measure is not standing up to my scrutiny. It probably isn't. Why I'm using these stats is because they are indicative of broader trends, and they're safely indicative rather than entirely accurate. But what this shows at the end of 07 is this blue line is people going to social networks, and this orange line is people going to email accounts. So this is 07, and this is the first time industry stats showed people going to social networking services more than their email accounts. and that switchover came about, and now people say things like, oh yes, email is for old people, which isn't entirely true at all, but it's important in terms of the social activity of communication between people shifts to social networks rather than to emails. And in social networks, we look at some of the characteristics of them later, but one of the fundamental things about them is that they're one-to-many platforms rather than one-to-one platforms, which emails often are. All right, not big email out services, but in the main, email is much more of a one-to-one. Okay, so at the other end of the spectrum, these stats are from March this year, so really recent. This orange line, squiggly line in this case, indicates browser hits, so people typing in or going to via their browser, which really influences what these statistics mean. Browser hits to Google, and this blue line shows browser hits to Facebook. Okay, so it doesn't show reach, which Google still has much greater reach in terms of the online population accessing. It doesn't show things like people who are using Google from websites' own Google searches or from their own browser bars searches. But it is still quite important because it shows what the influence of Facebook is, what the growth of Facebook is, and how people are starting to prioritise getting information. Okay? Lots of things we can argue about in there as well, but it's a nicely indicative stat that rounds off, I think, that shift from email and that shift then from search engine. Okay. So these are some current stats, May 98. And the stats section will be over soon, for those of you who are flagging already. It's just what I'm trying to do is really establish the kind of significance of the change that's happening at the moment and the kind of reach of social networking services and why they are important and why we should be taking them very seriously. Okay, so this is from May, and 36.9 million UK internet users. That's about 80% of the population. And out of those, 2.9.4 million visited at least one social networking site. These here are the statistics for age groups, actually, and you can see that the biggest age group that are online using social networking services are actually 25 to 34 category. They're not the youngsters. In terms of this category cut-off high, the 15 to 24-year-old group is still very high, 86%. And the other groups are. The 55-year-old plus group is the slightly lower one, but it's still 67%. So it's still really quite high. And these are the average hours per visitor over the period of the month. So of all visitors. So some people will be obviously on there for hours and hours every day. Some people will be going in to check their mail or to check their updates. And you can see from the... Hi.
Sorry.
No, welcome. You can see from the top